Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Sandy, and this is Share Tears Podcast, our first episode. Thank you so much for joining. Let's get started. Welcome everybody. I'm Sandy, and this is Share Tears Podcast, our first episode. Today's episode is going to be a little different in that it is our first episode. So I wanted to take some time to introduce myself and sharing with you a little bit about the inspiration behind this channel. I also would like to give you kind of a snapshot as to what you can expect each week when you tune in. So that is the objective for today's episode. Let's get started. Before I say another word, I want to give you a big thank you. Thank you to everyone who has been so supportive, has been so encouraging of me and this journey. It's been a long time coming and lots of false starts, lots of jangled nerves along the way. So I could not be here if it wasn't for being well supported. And I love you all. You know who you are. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Also, I need to say that for those of you who may have found your way to our channel because you too are going through grief after a significant loss of some type, I want to say I'm so sorry for your loss, but I'm not a person who believes in coincidences. So I'm hoping that maybe you found your way to our channel today because something that might be shared or said resonates with you and brings maybe some measure of comfort or healing. That's my hope. But welcome and thank you for tuning in. I'm really glad that you're here. So let me start by saying I'm Sandy. I am a regular person whose life was forever changed by an event that will mark my life in terms of the person I was before that date and the person I have been becoming, which will be a work in progress, I'm sure, for the rest of my life. That event is also the inspiration behind this channel and the creation of our production company, Moonlit Bridge Productions. If it wasn't for this event, I never in a million years would have imagined myself. I'm going to be 66 in December, and this is not where I thought I would be at this season of life, starting a podcast and a production company. But I think that I'm exactly where I need to be. And I'm grateful that those of you who are with me right now have tuned in. And I'm going to work really hard to make it worth your time to tune in each week. I know that all of us are suffering from information and emotional overload each day, and I certainly don't want to add to that. So I am going to try to pledge to keep each of our weekly episodes at 30 minutes or less. And if we need extra time because of an interview going longer or a topic that really needs to be addressed longer than 30 minutes, then I'll make multiple parts. So there'll be a part 2. The event that forever changed my life. The date was September 4th, 2021. That was the date that I received the unimaginable news that my firstborn and oldest son, Ryan, suddenly passed away. No one could have been prepared for that loss. His passing blindsided all who loved him and left me as his mom broken wide open. The person that I was before that date largely doesn't exist anymore. The person that has been evolving from that date is a work in progress. It's a brick by brick rebuilding of myself in a really conscious way, choosing all the materials, all of the aspects of this life after losing my son. It has been 4 years of deep reflection, lots of connection and sharing with people that I know really well, and also complete strangers, heart to heart, shared tears moments that I treasure. And I'll share the details of how we came up with the domain name Shared Tears next week, because it's an amazing story, and one of those where you can't make this up. That domain name feels sacred to me. And the experience of sharing tears with people, I've always thought has been a beautiful experience, that we as human beings have moments in life where, whether in celebration or whether in sorrow, but there's a mutual understanding of the human experience. And all that needs to happen is that moment where you share tears, where you acknowledge that you understand what the other is going through. And there is that mutual exchange between two human beings in a very vulnerable and honest way. And it's just a beautiful experience. So I love the name Shared Tears. And I think it's a perfect name for what I hope we bring each week. And that is to remind each other of our human connection. That before we had any other labels in life, we are, and we were a human being. We have that in common with everybody who's breathing air. We're all human beings. And to be a human being means that we share certain things to survive. Certain requirements to survive, we share. And we have life experiences that we can relate to. And that is something that I want us to be reminded of each week as we hear new stories of people, how much we have in common with each other in terms of the human experience. It may not be the exact scenario, but the essence of the experience of loss we can all relate to. Most of us can relate to health crises. Most of us can relate to losing an irreplaceable loved one. Most of us can relate to challenges with finances or a loss of a job. There are so many life experiences that we can relate to. And I think that understanding with regards to the human experience is a wonderful thing to not lose sight of. So I hope that we touch on that each week, and I hope that the stories that we share will bring proof of survival, that no matter what challenges we face, first of all, we're in this together. We are all each a human being doing the best we can during challenging times. We are in this together. You are not alone. I'm hoping to build a really engaged and supportive community. I want people to know that you will survive, even though it may feel very dark, and that those words are just utter nonsense from where you are right now. You will survive. We have something deep inside of us that is so strong and resilient. We sometimes aren't aware of that strength until we need to call upon it. And I hope the stories that you hear each week will remind you of that inner strength that each of us possess in some fashion. So proof of survival is one aim of sharing stories. The other aim is to have examples of how people at some point on your journey through grief, you're going to need to become consciously aware of how you're channeling that very powerful energy. That emotional energy is very powerful and very transformative. In the beginning, when you're in a survival state of mind, a lot of what you are doing you're unaware of. That doesn't change the fact that it is, that energy is being channeled somewhere. And so I'm hoping that our episodes will really make people think about being consciously engaged, even when you're tired and you're going through grief, to be aware of how you're using that energy. Because if you're not moving it towards a healthy, balanced use, then it can become destructive and dangerous for your health. And so we'll spend time with self-care during grief. I think it's important. So we want to stay as consciously involved in terms of where we channel that energy. And at some point, I'm curious to find out, and I certainly will be asking each of my guests, was there ever a moment at some point, and it will be a different timeline for everybody, but was there a point in your journey that you felt like a light switch was turned on and you suddenly had this inclination like you needed to be of service, or you needed to find something of purpose to sink that very powerful energy of grief into, to be of service, to do something of benefit for another? I'm curious to see how many people that I interview, if that is something that we all experience at some point, because for me, it feels like the natural next best way to move me towards healing is to do something that helps others. So I'll tell you the story next week, but the amazing story that woke me up out of a dead sleep to get this domain name and to ultimately move forward with a podcast at this season of my life without any experience. It feels like the right thing. Looking back on all of my life experience, it's like it brought me to this state. Even at my age, you're never too old. You're never too old. And so that brings me to the next really important thing that I want to touch on each week. And that is to close each episode on a high note. And the reason we had to postpone our launch in January is because I was just not able to navigate all of the breakneck changes that were happening here in the United States, some of which were very disturbing to me and put me in a state of paralysis. I couldn't move. I was overwhelmed. And I was questioning whether or not we would have anything to offer in this environment that would be helpful to anyone. And it took me several months to come to the conclusion that yes, we do have something to offer, that there can't be enough voices that help all of us navigate through this challenging environment. There are so many ways to do it. So it's worth sharing, it's worth listening. And I decided that each episode is going to end on that high note by never letting us forget what true courage and true compassion look like. And because I was thinking, what really is at the root of courageous and compassionate actions? And it really boils down to caring for each other in a way that is born of our shared human experience, of the things that we have in common that we could relate to, whether we have empathy for another's experience or whether it's coming from a sympathetic disposition that you might have. The ultimate result is a need to do something to lessen the suffering from another, and that's compassion. And that is love at its base. And as far as acts of courage, that is usually fueled by love as well. Love of country, love of family, a need to protect and keep safe things that we treasure, that we believe are valuable and precious to our life experience. So the motivating factor behind courage and compassion can begin from a place of shared tears and ultimately of love. So today's episode, I'm going to pay tribute to members of my family that I view as heroes. Some are departed and some are still here, who have answered a call greater than themselves, who have risked everything to fight against tyranny, fascism, Nazism, to support our democracy and our Constitution, and also to pay tribute to people I don't know that are not part of my family or extended family or close friends, just all members of the armed forces who are risking it today or who have risked everything in the past. Thank you very much to you and your family. It's kind of a belated Veterans Day, but I think that we should probably be grateful every day of the year. So I'm proud to stand on the shoulders of many of those that have come before me to stand up for the gift of our democracy. And I will be the first one to say that it is imperfect, yes, but any form of government for the people, by the people, is not going to be perfect because we're not perfect. But what makes democracy so special and has motivated so many people to risk everything to fight for it is because it gives us a chance as regular citizens to have a seat at the decision-making table by our vote. And that's a huge thing. That's a huge gift. That means that when we make mistakes and we are faced with unintended consequences, we have a chance to do better, to evolve, to make different choices. We have an opportunity to craft the future that we want for ourselves, for the people we love, and for future generations. That's a beautiful gift, imperfect as it is. I feel very passionate about freedom and our democracy and what our Constitution promises each and every one of us in terms of rights and the rule of law. It's all very precious and worth fighting for and speaking up for. My mom's dad, who was 29 years old in March of 1944, my mom was 6, and he answered the call to fight against Hitler's fascism and the Nazism that was expanding across Europe at the time during World War II. By September of that same year, he lost his life to a landmine on foreign soil. And his final resting place is marked by a very simple white cross, one of literally hundreds that dot a beautifully landscaped army cemetery in Lorraine, France. Now, I haven't been able to visit his burial site in person, but members of my family have, and that warms my heart that people who love him have visited him at his gravesite. My mom's mom, my grandma, eventually remarried our Poppy, who also saw combat in World War II. But fortunately, he came back, and their marriage lasted more than 50 years. My dad was drafted during Vietnam at the same age or thereabouts as my mom's dad was when he enlisted. I was the oldest of 3 kids. I was 6, the same age as my mom, when she said goodbye to her dad during the war. It was a very, very stressful and challenging time for my family. Initially, though, the Army, because my dad was finishing up his medical residency at LA County in Los Angeles, California, where we lived, they weren't going to send him to Vietnam initially. They were going to have him serve as a medical physician at an Army hospital in Springfield, Virginia for 2 years. So my parents found a renter for their house in LA, and we all packed up and moved to Springfield, Virginia, where we were supposed to be for 2 years. But we were there 6 months when they changed my dad's orders and decided to send him to Vietnam. My mom moved all of us to San Diego so we could be near her parents, my grandparents, during that year that my dad was gone. It was a very, very traumatic period for our family, and especially for my mom, given losing her dad, the time frames, the age of my dad. It was just devastatingly hard for her. My dad thankfully came back. He was marked by war, as every person who has ever been in the experience of a war, of combat, carries that mark. I think war always leaves its mark, whether it's in the history books or army cemeteries or in the souls of those who come back. It left its mark. But he had memories of fighting alongside, not fighting, he was a medical doctor alongside the 101st Airborne Division. He was very proud of his service with the 101st Airborne Division and carried that as one of his proudest experiences in life, I think, throughout his life. And he had plenty of stories that he would love to share about his time with the 101st Airborne Division. My brother Scott enlisted with the Navy. He received his medical education through the Navy and is a practicing physician today. My son Ryan, his paternal grandpa, was a commander in the Navy. He was career military and served both in the Korean War and World War II. And Ryan also was part of a brotherhood of guys from high school all the way until he passed. They were very close, like brothers. And two two of his buddies did also enlist in the service and saw combat. So we have a very large circle of loved ones, extended family, and friends who have risked it all. And I am so grateful to all of you, and look at each and every one of you as heroes in my book, that you would risk it all so that we are safe, so that we have freedom. And I just want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to all of you who I don't know, who are doing the hard work today, that are still in the service, all the branches of the military. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you and to your families, because they make sacrifices too. So that is where I would like to leave today's first episode, with the profiles in courage and compassion being all of our brave men and women in the armed forces who are always fighting and have fought for a quality of life that we should never take for granted. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for listening today. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.